I'm Glenda from the West Coast Wolves podcast. Welcome to my apartment. I'm filming today without Bernadette, I'm afraid, but I wanted to do a little intro for my sweater surgery clip that I'm going to start. It is Sunday, June 19th, and it is Sunday, so I didn't blow my hair dry. If you're wondering why it's curly, this is what it does if I don't blow it dry. Okay, so let's get started. The sweater I'm going to operate on is the Central Park hoodie by Heather Ladinsky. You can see I did show it very briefly a couple of podcasts ago. You can see it's in Knoll Kilcar tweed, which is a 100% wool tweed spun in County Donegal in Ireland. And this is the colorway Muff, which is a very dark purple with some turquoise and lighter purple and even some little green bits. I apologize if I'm bouncing the table. This is my third time trying to shoot this because I keep bouncing the camera a lot, so I'm going to try not to touch it. You can see I picked up, sorry for the clicking, that's the buttons on the table. I picked up the turquoise with the turquoise buttons because I just like the accent. So I really like this sweater. The pattern, like I said, Central Park hoodie, Heather Ladinsky. It was first published in the Knit Scene fall 2006 issue, which was one of the early ones. I've loved this pattern ever since I first saw it, and I had been waiting to find the perfect yarn to make it with. The thing about this sweater, which I did not think about until after I did it, if you go look up the pattern on Ravelry, there is a discussion thread about things that you should know before you start knitting it. I didn't even know about the thread. I didn't think to look for one until after I finished. And the problem with the sweater, let me put it on, excuse me for the clicking of buttons on things. It is a slightly boxy style, so it's a little bit oversized. This was the 36-inch size that I made, and it is quite a bit loose in the body, width-wise. I think my actual underarm is about, the body's about here. The problem is it's very short. Oh, sorry, bouncing camera. So if I'm standing out, you can see it's just at my pocket on my jeans. I would like it about 2 inches, maybe 1.5 inches, 2 inches longer. So, of course, the problem is the sweater was knit bottom up in pieces. Now, it's funny, when I looked at the sweater construction initially, I looked at the pattern enough to think, oh, maybe I should do the fronts and the backs all as one piece rather than do them in 3 separate pieces and sew them together. But then I talked to a friend of mine who's a designer, and Paulette, and she suggested that the structure would probably, the weight of the sweater without those good shoulder seams, like the good solid, I don't know if you can even see it. But anyway, the structure of the seaming helps keep the shape of the sweater when you're wearing it, especially with a heavy wool like this one. So I did that. I did the 3 pieces and I stitched them together. The downside, or the thing was, I didn't actually look at the schematic and didn't think about the actual length of the body. So like I said, now I want it 2 inches longer. So in order to do that, I could rip out the whole sweater and redo it, but that would be a pain in the butt. So I'm going to remove the button band, which you can see here. It was added on. You can see the cable, and then I picked up and added the button band and the buttonhole band as one big long piece that goes all the way around the front and across the top of the hood. I'm going to pick this out, take it off, save that yarn. Then what I'm going to do is go to the side seams, and where's my side seam? Here, right there. You can't really see it, but it's a mattress stitched seam, so there's the inside. I have to unpick that to about this height, which is just past the ribbing, maybe a little bit up. Then I'm going to cut the yarn, cut the knitting at the division between the ribbing and the main body of the sweater. And then my goal actually is to preserve the ribbing, knit, put it aside, knit, pick up the stitches and knit down for about another inch. If I had enough yarn, I actually wouldn't mind doing a whole other cable repeat, but we'll see how much yarn I have left. Then I will reattach the ribbing and then redo the button band and buttonhole band. So it's shouldn't be too much work. It'll be a little bit of finagling with things, but it should be okay. Yeah, and then it will all be finished and I can sew it back together. And I may or may not shorten the sleeves. They feel like they're a little bit long. They also get quite narrow at the cuff, so in some ways I could widen them and then reknit the cuff, but I might just shorten them and just leave it at that. I feel like that's kind of, they're not so much off that I dislike them, but they're just maybe a little bit too long, just because I have short arms, because I'm short. So anyway, that's the plan for this sweater, and we're going to start it today, and hopefully I'll have it done in about a week or so, just kind of picking at it. And I will film it in little bits and piece them all together, and you will get a sweater surgery video out of it. So yeah, that's the plan. So I'm going to get started, and I will see you in a few minutes. Okay, bye. Alright, I'm back. So I've taken off the buttons. I have, sorry for the noise, I'm trying not to bounce the camera either. There's my buttons that I've picked out with my handy dandy stitch ripper. It's a godsend, that tool. My other handy dandy tool, good old fashioned metal darning needle. At the store we sell wooden ones and we sell metal ones, and people are always like, well, what's the difference? And for me, the difference is that my darning needle tends to become a tool for pulling out yarn. And then I've broken many plastic ones that way, so I'm trying not to use the plastic ones for this anymore. I have take the buttons off. Now I'm going to pick out the cast off edge, and the way you can tell, because I do have a friend that buys sweaters in the store and then rips them out and uses yarn again. Things to look for when you're doing that, like if you're poking it out. Can I get the light to go on here? Your cast off is a series of V's, right? So the direction, if you think of a V like this way, the open part of the V, it's formed in the way, like the top of the V is where you finish off. So this is my bottom edge, and now I'm picking out this is my tail, and because when I weave my ends in, I go across the bottom edge of, which you can't see because I'm blocking the light, the bottom edge of the button band, and then up into the seam somewhere, and hide it in the back. So what I'm doing is I'm actually, let's see if I can do this without completely shaking the camera. Here's the tail that I've found, and when you pull on it, you can see the little threads. So you have to kind of tug on it and watch the piece that moves, and then get your needle under there. This one's a little dull, so it's a little harder, and pry it out, and then you do the next one, look for the piece that moves. It's not a fast process, but it does work, and I'm preserving every last little ounce of yarn, because see, and now it's moved over to here, so now I can, sometimes you can pull like many at a time. See, this one's, oh, I can't tell. Okay, so I'm going to keep picking this out, and then I'm just going to unravel it, and that's the fun part. Okay. Okay, so I have managed to untangle my end. That's how much I wove in, if people wonder. I did realize, I forgot that this is a 2-ply yarn. When you're pulling, unpicking threads, be careful, try and be aware of if they're multi-plied, because you don't want to accidentally break a ply, because then you can't save the yarn, so it's just something to be aware of. So you can see now I've started unpicking, you can see, yeah, you can see the little loops of the stitches there. So I'm just at the stage where I'm literally just ripping this out, and just like you're ripping out some knitting that was not actually finished. So the key when you're doing this, because this is a fuzzy yarn, always go slow, because so it'll go for a little bit and then it kind of sticks, and you actually have to pull apart the fuzziness, basically the fuzziness of the yarn, and the fact that it's been sat as a finished object and even worn a couple times, has ever so slightly felted together. So you just want to be gentle with it and sort of pry the hairs. If you have long hair, or you're familiar with long hair, you will know that it gets in everything and it tends to wrap around stuff. So it's the same idea, except instead of hair, it's like the fuzzy part of the yarn. So, or like the wool, it's just, fibers. So just be gentle, kind of go slowly. Yeah, and it just goes, and it's pretty straightforward, and it's actually kind of fun. And it's just knitting. It doesn't matter if you pull it out. It's actually very therapeutic, because I'm going to make it an even better sweater. So I'm going to keep doing this, and then I will pick out the seams, and I will show you when I get to the cutting point. Well, kind of. Okay, bye. Okay, so I'm back. I have took a break, had some lunch, did some stitch pulling out. So I have separated the two seams. That's the left front here and the back, and then on the other side of the back, there's the back and the right front. Those are unpicked and pulled apart and ready for some cutting. Along here, you can see, if I put it, can you see there? Yeah, just behind. In here, that's the holes from where the button band was pulled out. Of course, because you pick them up, so when you pick the stitches up and knit them on, it leaves the little gaps, which is fine. You won't even notice it once I pick it up again and redo the button band. I have also marked. This is the division point between the ribbing and the cable, where the main pattern of the front starts. Actually, it's the right front. So I wanted to show you really quick before I do that. This is a yarn that I pulled out from the button band. It is, of course, all ramen noodle-y and kind of wiggly from being in the sweater for a year, almost a year. You'll probably notice if you've ever pulled a swatch out, it takes that shape pretty fast, like that kind of kinkiness. Ideally, you don't want to be knitting with the yarn when it's still kinky like this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put on my Swift and kind of re-skein it, and then I'm going to wash it, just kind of the same as you wash your sweater, just soak it in cold water for a little while, and then I'm going to hang it under tension, and that will dry it. It'll pull some of the kink out when it dries. Probably won't go 100%, but that's fine. Basically, if you knit with a yarn that is kinky like this, you're going to get an uneven tension in your knitting, especially on stocking end. It'll be really obvious. And again, it's made worse too by the fact that this is kind of a thick and thin yarn. You can sort of see just the nature of the yarn. I mean, even this is the new ball, and even this is just a little bit thick and thin. You can see it against my forehead. And I've done it before where I've just pulled out and re-knit part of a sweater without washing the yarn, and the problem is you can see it. It does smooth out, and the more you wash it, the smoother it gets. But I could still see it, and I get a little bit. If you're going to do it, you might as well do it right. So, just taking that extra step to wash it. The air conditioning in our building is actually broken right now, so it averages 23, 24 degrees in here every day. So it's actually, if I wash this, it will be dry pretty quickly. I'm going to do it tonight, and I'm sure by even tomorrow morning it's going to be pretty much dry. And it's wool, so it doesn't, wool dries fairly quickly, as long as it's not in damp conditions. So where I've marked on here, this is I looked at the pattern again, just to remind myself. And on sorry, this is harder to set up than I thought, but I figured it's easier shooting it this way than trying to hold it above what I'm doing. The ribbing changes, and then there's 2 rows plain, and then let's see if I can get the camera to change the lighting. The cable starts, the twist is done on the 3rd row of the pattern once you switch from ribbing. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to trim it at this point, which is where I've marked the 1st row after the ribbing, and then I'm just going to unravel it and pull it all out. So, and then what I have ready is the 2 sets of needles. So the 5mm is what I actually knitted on. Sorry, I'm clicking needles and stuff. The 3.5, I think this is the 3.5. It's smaller, and I'm going to put the ribbing on this because I don't want to, like I said, I'm going to try and graft it. So I'm going to put it on here and hold it, and then hopefully I can graft it together. So don't do the whole thing at once. Do one piece at a time, and I'm starting with the right front because it's only 36 stitches or so. Maybe 38, I can't remember, but I will check. Do check your numbers on the pattern. You want to have your pattern handy when you're doing this so you know exactly how to pick things up and don't mess it up, because if you drop a stitch or lose a stitch, you need to know that right away so you can find it and not lose it and not have a big problem later. Okay, shall we cut? I'm going to pause this and reposition and then cut on camera. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I can't change the angle. It's not going to work. I need a second set of hands, which I don't have today, but here we go. I have my scissors, my mark, and we just are going to cut this stitch, poof, and pull it out. And here we go. Handy dandy stitch marker, or needle again, and we just you just kind of unpick your row. You just pull on your stitches, and let's see now, did I do it right? The moment of truth. This should come right off because it is at the end of the piece of knitting. And there we go. See, it's separated. So now what I want to be doing is this yarn actually isn't bad. It's pretty grippy for what it is. So okay, the trick to be careful of is, it's really hard to see. I should have a piece of paper behind or something. As I'm pulling out, ideally you don't want to you want to only unpick the row that you cut and not the rows above or below, but it's sometimes hard to do that. So you just sort of go slowly and try not to make a mess. And here we go. Always look for the piece with the end on it. That's what you're picking out. And you just kind of pick it out stitch by stitch. This is when I need a second set of hands. Where's Bernadette when you need her? I could have waited till somebody was around, but why would I do that? Okay, so here we go. Picking out one by one. This is not as scary as it looks. It's only knitting. Just remember that. It's only knitting. So I'm just following this stitch. And if you remember, think of the construction of your knit. Now there are technically two ends. One was there, because obviously it was a piece you cut, right? So there's one there, and then I'm just watching. Always make sure you're tugging on the one that is connected to your broken end. And you just pull this apart bit by bit. And, okay, I'm going to stop the camera and do this flat and get my stitches on the needle. To get the stitches on your needle, sorry, forgot about that clicking sound, gosh. I'm going to just basically, so I'll start with the rib side. And you're just, like if you've ever pulled your needle out accidentally and you have to go and pick your stitches back up again, exactly the same process. Don't worry about the alignment of how they're facing just yet. That's can be fixed later. At this point, you really just want to get this off. If you've ever done an afterthought heel in a sock, it's kind of the same process. I would say it's very much like that. So you see, I'm just going to put those on the needle. And that's the smaller one. It's smaller than what I knitted on. Then you're not worried about like stretching the stitches or anything like that, and it'll just come out there. And meanwhile, I'll do the same thing on the other side with the 5s. So yeah. Okay, so that's it for the moment. Alright, so it's all finished. I have successfully pulled out the piece of yarn. You can see the tail bit on the side there where I've pulled out, unpicked the row. And there are 40 stitches on the ribbing and 40 stitches on the body. I did double check the pattern again, and it's like in sewing, measure twice, cut once. So in this one, you check the pattern 7 times before you actually start picking out, make sure it works out right. Yeah, so now it's a pretty straight shot. I just have to go from the bottom of the sweater. So basically just here, I'm going to pick out or take these stitches and attach the new piece of yarn and start knitting in the opposite direction. Technically, when you do this, your stitches go half a stitch off because when you turn it upside down, it's just a little bit offset, just because now you're working upside down. You won't really notice it. It's kind of invisible once it's knit up. So I will go ahead and do that, and then I will show you what it looks like. And then I may or may not get to some grafting tonight to put the piece back together. Okay, here we go. Thanks. So I have finished the right front piece. The needle shows the division line roughly between where, it shows where I picked up and knit downward. It was technically right below that cable twist that it's laying over. To the left of the needle, the stocking stitch section, you can see a little bit of a divot right through here. That's down here is where the new stitching is. This is the old part. Once this is blocked, it'll smooth out. You won't even see it. I had mentioned before that when you knit in the opposite direction, you get a little bit of a change in your stitching. Basically, everything shifts over by half a stitch. You can see it here. See, like this is the V, and then all of a sudden it smushes over and disappears. The light's not super great. It's quite late in the day, but that's where it changes, and you could kind of see it on this side too. It's a little harder to see there. Again, the light's not great. I'm sorry. But anyway, if you look closely, you can see it. Most people aren't even going to notice. Please don't point it out to me when you see me wearing this sweater. And then I'll just quickly show you that's how much extra length I've added in, roughly. Yeah, so I'm going to switch views, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I wanted to show you one last shot of the right fronts. In particular, if you look here, that is where I grafted and kept the pearl stitches down. There we go. Get the camera to keep the light that way. So it doesn't change to a knit row in here. It did initially. I was just grafting across normally, and of course that gives you a smooth, like a knit row facing out. So then I decided to change it and make sure that those stitches came up as purl. So you need to reverse the order of your Kitchener stitch to do that. So just switch all your knits to purls and all your purls to knit. Does that make sense? It's really not as hard as it sounds. You literally just work it in the opposite order for the space, those two stitches. And every time you take, or when I came to those two stitches, I just reversed it and it worked out. Just kind of keeps it a little neater, makes it look a little less obvious that I've been hacking my sweater to pieces. Yeah, but now I'm really happy with how that turned out. It was not nearly as hard as I thought it would be, I have to admit. Let me see. So again, you can see the length difference. It's about, get the sleeve out of there. It's about 2 inches, 1.5 inches. I can't really tell. You can see there the difference in it. Wow, that actually looks a lot more from that angle. I don't think it's that much. When I'm finished, I will show you one more picture of it all done, and then I will have a nice cozy hoodie to wear as soon as the weather gets cold again, which might be next week. It might not be till August. This is Vancouver, and there's really no way to know. It's just the way it goes. So this has been really fun making this video. I have some editing to do, which I've started, and it's actually kind of fun. And we're hoping to do more of these little tutorial things. If you have suggestions or ideas for stuff you'd like us to explain, please let us know. And you can tell me what you thought of this, and you can critique my editing skills, because it's me doing it this time, not Bernadette. Yeah, that's great. Well, I hope everyone had fun, and we will see you again very soon. Have a great week, everyone. Bye!